أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري فداه أرواح العالمين. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master, the Savior, the Avenger, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the biggest challenges that humanity faces in the 21st century is what is often dubbed as the 21st century's plague. And that is the debilitating mental illness known as depression. So prevalent is this disease, so crippling and destructive is this condition, that a mere skim through the facts and figures and statistics relating to it, the number of people suffering from it, the astronomically high numbers of medications prescribed for it, especially in the so-called developed world, especially in Western countries, and in countries that have a strange correlation between the high GDP as a quantitative measure of the nation's economic development. In those countries in particular, where personal income is higher than developing nations, there is a strange correlation between that and the number of patients suffering from all manner of mental health issues, but in particular depression. In fact, such is the problem that you find it's turned into a fad. All the rave is about mental illnesses, to the extent that you have religious scholars now addressing this extremely challenging problem. Unfortunately, I feel that when we do try to address this problem, we don't do so in the right manner. What happens is that we adopt the culturally prevalent narrative, and we tend to give advice based on psychological findings, which often tend to address and try to resolve the symptoms rather than the underlying causes of this disease. When in fact, if you look at the teachings of the Holy Prophet and his immaculate household, you find that the Ahlul Bayt, may God's peace and blessings be upon them, try to address the root cause, not just the symptoms. If someone went to their GP or drove down to the emergency room with an elevated body temperature, a good doctor is one who doesn't just give paracetamol or any other drug that lowers the body's temperature and sends the patient back home. A good physician is one who looks for a possible infection that gave rise to the high temperature. Why is this person suffering from a fever? If someone showed up in a post-COVID-19 world to a mosque or an Islamic center with a high fever, the automatic assumption now is that this person wasn't exercising, that they didn't just show up from the gym, but rather they must have an underlying infection. And this infection could be viral and potentially be a symptom of COVID-19, which is why they have to be rushed to the nearest emergency room. Modern science often tries to address the symptoms rather than the causes, the root of the problem, but not Islam. Which is why, if you look at the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, they take a completely different, and one might argue radical approach to addressing the disease of depression. One of those root causes of depression is what we'll be talking about tonight, inshallah. Brilliant minds, and this is something I alluded to over the last couple of nights. Geniuses, people with advanced degrees and credentials, individuals with extensive background in marketing. They put their brains together, and I think it was rather humorous, but also an ominous sign of the times that we live in. I was watching an interview with a guy who introduced himself as the co-inventor of Facebook's like button. And it got me thinking, you need people, brilliant minds, geniuses, as I said, to come together to invent a button. You and I might think this is rather funny or pathetic, but the fact of the matter is, what we fail to grasp is a simple button is in fact tapping into our most primal instincts. There's a reason why you have these companies, these international conglomerates, these marketing behemoths spending millions and millions of dollars in R&D, research and development, to try and invent one button. The rating system that you find on Amazon, for example, millions was invested to bring that about. And it's reaped billions of dollars worth of extra revenue in the pockets of the executives and shareholders of the company because of a simple 5-star rating system. Right? Facebook's like button is important and successful and profitable for the company, and it's turned this company into one that has infinite value. Hundreds of billions of dollars worth of revenue is brought into it on an annual basis because that button, as simple as it may seem, and it's a thumbs up, right? And you find it not just on Facebook, but on all social media platforms. You find it in Twitter, you find it on YouTube, you find it on Instagram, you find it all over the place. The reason it's so successful is that it tingles our narcissistic dispositions. Let me take a couple of steps back, right? I don't want to come across as someone who's anti-social media, anti-everything. But let's try and understand what we're dealing with. If we're going to enter this world of social media, if we're going to engage with all of these different platforms, let's at least figure out what we're dealing with. Let's not do so with complete ambivalence and ignorance. Let's not be mindless consumers. Let's at least be informed before we're sucked into this black hole and this vortex that feeds into our narcissism and creates people who generation after generation were being subjected to the laws of entropy. You think the laws of entropy, meaning that things will fall into disarray, only apply to physical objects? They apply to morality. And that is why the parents of today will tell the youngsters that back in our day things were much simpler. It was so much easier. It was so much more convenient for you to convince someone to do the right thing. And now look at where we're headed, look at what's happening to us. And I bet you that their own parents would have said the same thing to them. In other words, we're on a downward spiral of immorality. And I talked about this in the previous nights. You see, one of the easiest ways for us to understand our own dispositions, our own proclivities, our own tendencies in a better manner is, here's a really simple exercise that you can all do. Observe children and how they behave. Because children are an incredibly powerful mirror that reflects our own personalities without the inhibitions, without all the extra layers, without the hypocrisy. Children will reveal exactly how you and I act if we were not confined by those inhibitions. I'll give you an example. When the stomach gets empty, what then happens is that your blood glucose level will fall. When the blood sugar level falls, your brain will interpret that as the feeling of hunger. Neurons will fire up and you will start to feel hungry. Now in a child, because they don't have those inhibitions, because they don't care what other people think, they feel a need, the need needs to be satisfied. What happens is that a child goes quickly from being happy and bubbly into being cranky and angry and even starts to cry. As an adult, you try to convince the child to just wait a little bit longer. I'm cooking the food. Give me 10 minutes, it'll be ready. The child couldn't care less. If they're hungry, they want their food right then and there. Or you're driving. You say to your kid that, give me 5 minutes until we get to the next service station. Again, the child can't wait. Why? Because they feel the need, they feel the hunger, they have that sensation, they need it to be satisfied. Now, as for adults, there is a difference in the sense that we have the same needs. If you get hungry, you also want to satisfy this hunger. But what happens is that we have inhibitions. For example, you're sitting in a meeting, an important business meeting. You feel hungry. You're not gonna experience a crazy outburst. Imagine like if you suddenly got up and left the meeting, and if somebody asked what happened, you're like, I'm hungry, I'm going for a burger. We're in the middle of a meeting. What happens is that your self-respect, your notion of protecting your reputation, right? You feel like, come on, my reputation's at risk here. I can't act like a child, I'm an adult. So what happens is that you inhibit those needs. Though that desire for food gets controlled and disciplined, and you may completely disregard it for a good few hours. So what? Because your reputation comes before your immediate need to fill your stomach. So you see, the difference is that it's the same need. The way you react to it, suddenly there are other considerations that factor into your decision-making process. Let me give you another example. Speaking of narcissism, speaking of the desire to be respected, the desire to be loved, the desire to be liked. Children have the same desire. And so, daddy goes out and buys the kid a pair of new shoes. You'll notice as soon as the kid realizes that they have this new pair of shoes, they will immediately run to the neighbors to show their shiny new shoes to the neighbors' kids. Why? Because he thinks that by showing his shoes to the neighbors and to the other kids in the neighborhood, they will then become the center of attention. All the other kids are going to gather around them to see their new pair of sneakers. As far as we are concerned, if we buy something new, something shiny, something cool, something expensive, some brand name, some mark, right? We have the same exact desire. Same desire. The question now is, do we inhibit these desires? Do we keep them in check? Do we control them? Or do we let them run wild? Do we let those desires control us, or do we control the desires? It's as simple as that. Again, I'm diluting this to the most basic building blocks of the argument. What this means, as an extension, is that having this desire for respect, for people loving us, liking us, is not in itself a bad thing. How? Remember when I said that if you are in a meeting and you get hungry, you do not allow yourself to experience a sudden outburst. You don't just storm out of the meeting looking for the nearest burger joint. The reason you don't do that is out of self-respect, right? You think to yourself that my reputation, my social standing, how people view me has to be protected. And your sense of self-respect here is making sure that you do not cross those boundaries. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. Without a sense of self-respect, without due care toward our social standing, if we didn't care enough and give regard to our reputation, God knows the kind of filthy debaucheries we would engage in. Am I right or am I wrong? Most of the things that we have a desire to do, we tend to control, we tend to inhibit, because we care about how people view us. Is that a good thing? Of course it's a good thing. The problem is when this desire for self-respect, for status, for love, for admiration by other people, when this is left unchecked. Listen to what Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam says. The Imam says, Ma dhi'bani dariyan. Look at the scenario the Imam is creating here. Absolutely impeccable. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, you have two types of mental illnesses. You have the type that's caused by some chemical imbalance in the brain, something physiological, right? And I'm not talking about that. It's outside my field of expertise. You might need medications, you might need, I don't know, therapy, whatever. But you have the other types of mental illnesses which are caused by these primal instincts being left unchecked and uncontrolled. Wallahi, if we follow the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, we wouldn't suffer from those. Look at how Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam describes this. He says, Ma dhi'bani dariyan. Imagine a flock of sheep. غَابَ عَنْهُمْ رَاعِيهِمْ, who have a shepherd, but the shepherd is lost, or he's gone for the day, or he lost the flock, or whatever it is. The shepherd is no longer there. Now imagine two wolves attacking this flock. أَحَدُهُمَا فِي أَوَّلِهِ وَالثَّانِي فِي آخِرِهِ. The Imam says these two wolves attack and ambush the flock, each from one end, meaning that the flock has nowhere to go. He says that these two wolves are no more dangerous and destructive to this flock of sheep than hubbul mali wal jah, than our desire for wealth and for status. Status. Isn't it ironic, by the way? They call it a Facebook status, a WhatsApp status. Hubbul jah. By the way, in our traditions, this proclivity, this disposition that we all have to be liked and respected and admired and loved and whatnot, is mentioned in the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt under different headings. One of them is Hubbul jah, the love of position and status. The other is Hubbul sharaf, the love of being respected. Sharaf means honor, right? Being honored, respected, loved. The Imam says that the love of money and the love of status is more dangerous than these two wolves, which we all know what's going to happen to the flock of sheep. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'm going to read you some more hadith. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in one hadith, he says, Hubbul jahi wal mal. Once again, in reference to these two issues. Hubbul jah wal mal yunbitan nifaq fil qalb kama yunbitul ma'ul baql. This desire grows hypocrisy in the heart the way water grows bush beans or legumes. Have you seen one of the easiest things to grow if you want to start planting stuff in the kitchen or in the backyard or whatever? It's these beans, especially bush beans. They require very little work. All they need is a little moisture. The Imam, the Holy Prophet says in this hadith that these desires left unchecked, they will cause hypocrisy to grow like mushrooms in your heart. Why? Because when you adopt this mindset, and when you recognize that people will laugh at your jokes, again, let's go back to the example of children. A child will say something cute. The parents will laugh and they'll encourage the kid, right? Maybe it's actually objectively funny, maybe it's not even funny, but as parents, of course, they're going to laugh at their kid's joke. The child will automatically register this in their brain, that if I say something like that, or if I make the statement over and over again, it'll make me the center of attention. It'll make people laugh at my jokes. So what tends to happen, and I'm sure you can relate to that, is that the child will say the same stupid thing in front of other people, which will embarrass the hell out of the parents. And now if the parents say, shush, quiet, the child won't stop. Because he or she has already decided for themselves that saying this, and I've seen this, I've seen it. Just the other day we were at somebody's house and their kid came and he started saying really embarrassing things about the parents. Dad, tell them the story of such and such. And it was a super embarrassing thing. And of course the father tried to calm him down, like, come on, please, don't say anything. We got guests, this, that, and the other. But he wouldn't stop. Why? Because again, it's not a statement about this child's character. This is perfectly normal. This is natural. We all have that. The problem is when we as adults, as a child, they'll get away with anything. But as an adult, you have to keep this in check. You have to have some self-respect so as not to cross those boundaries in front of other people. You've seen people who, for example, would crack jokes left, right, and center just for some cheap laughs. And you'll have these individuals who are known within their circle of friends as the jokesters, right? As the clowns, as the class clowns especially, right? The reason they do that is because they've recognized the need to satisfy this narcissistic desire of being loved and respected. And so they make this connection that if I crack more jokes, if I act funny, if I say these silly things, that will make me the center of attention, the topic of conversation. This is why you have so many of these celebrities who engage in the most filthy acts They'll do the most disgusting things, the most grotesque things, just for attention. Because as an actor, as a singer, as these so-called, Instagram influencer or whatever it might be, you've automatically rewired your brain to act out in this manner for people to like you. And if not like you, at the very least to make you a topic of conversation over the dinner table. It feeds into that narcissistic desire. Again, to a certain extent, that's a good thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the desire to sleep. When we get tired, we fall asleep. When we get hungry, we eat. In order for humanity to continue and not go extinct, He put the desire towards the opposite gender in all of us. And that's a good thing. But when it's left unchecked, that's when you have a problem. And when does it go unchecked? This sense of self-respect? It's when you are in a gathering, you see sins being committed. You know that your duty is to get up and walk out, but you don't. Why? You say to yourself, but what will they say? So many sins are committed in our communities under the guise and under the banner of what will they say? You know you're supposed to walk out when someone is being slandered, but what will they say though? You know that this is a sinful gathering, even if it's your cousin's wedding, but what will they say though? You know that you're supposed to maintain your hijab, but what will they say though? So many sins are committed by sisters, by brothers. God knows what happens out there under the pretext of what will they say though. That's when this desire, this narcissistic proclivity for people to like me, to validate me, to praise me, to give me all these positive comments is left unchecked. That's when you know that you've lost control. Again, let me read you some more hadith. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, ما أرى شيئا أضر بقلوب الرجال من خفق النعال وراء ظهورهم. He says, I don't see anything more detrimental, more dangerous to an individual than shoes flapping behind you. Meaning having a fan base. Right? And this is not exclusive to celebrities or scholars or anything like that. Every little group of friends in high school, at university, has a leader. The Imam says that having people walk behind you, shoes flapping on the ground, is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you. Why? Because you feed this narcissistic tendency. Because it makes you feel important. It makes you feel like you matter. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, Inna Allah yubghidu shuhrat al-libas. Allah despises. Just think of the gravity of that statement. God, the creator of the universe, despises certain things. Like what? Shuhratul libas. Meaning to wear things so that it would make you famous. Famous not as in you turn into an overnight celebrity. Famous isn't famous in the community. Oh, did you see her dress? Oh, did you see his watch? Oh, did you see his new sneakers? Oh, did you see this, that, and the other? يُبْغِضُ شُهْرَةَ اللِّبَاسِ. And the marketing executives, they draw you right into the trap of this desire to become famous by the clothes that we wear, by the sneakers, by the handbags, by the shoes, by this, that. By using all manner of different techniques. Scarcity being one of them. You look at the product, there's nothing special about it, but they make it scarce. They make it, they ensure that it's not available everywhere. They make it expensive intentionally, just so you think it's important. You think it makes you important. وعنه عليه السلام, meaning Imam al-Sadiq, الشهرة خيرها وشرها في النار. Being famous, whether it's for a good reason or a bad reason, they both lead to the fires of hell. وقال أمير المؤمنين تبذل ولا تشتهر. Don't be famous. Avoid fame. Avoid having people point at you in praise and in adoration. ولا ترفع شخصك لتذكر. Don't put yourself out there so that people talk about you. Even when we comment over, oh, mashallah, sister, how beautiful are you in that picture? Oh, mashallah, brother, what a beautiful this, that, and the other. When we leave a positive comment, we do so. Again, if you explore it, if you actually dig deep inside of you, you'll know that one of the reasons you're doing this is so that when you do the same thing, they also reciprocate the favor and say something positive about you. It's always about me. It's all about this insatiable beast. This desire that is incredibly powerful. And this society, this culture, this social media platforms that we have that have consumed our lives, it all feeds that insatiable beast. It just makes it bigger and bigger and more powerful to the point where you just can't control it anymore. There's nothing you can do. Listen to this beautiful hadith. The Imam speaks about the latter days. And he says that when 313 righteous, pious companions gather together, يَكُونُ كَانَ الَّذِي تُرِيدُونَ. What you want will happen, meaning the 12th Imam, عَجَّلَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فَرَجَهُ الشَّرِيفِ, will reappear. So the Imam then says, the problem is with our Shia. The problem is we can't find this 313 people. So the Imam begins to describe the kind of qualities that he wants in the companions of the 12th Imam. I'm skipping most of the hadith, but the last part is what I want to draw your attention to. The guy asks the Imam, how do we find them? Where do we look for these people? The Imam says, الَّذِينَ. Do you know what they're like, these 313 people? الَّذِينَ إِذَا شَهِدُوا لَمْ يُعْرَفُوا. When they give testimony, people are going to say, but who are you again? No one knows who they are. They are the antithesis of famous. They are the opposite of prominent. إِن شَهِدُوا لَمْ يُعْرَفُوا. Number one. وَإِن غَابُوا لَمْ يُفْتَقَدُوا. And when they're away, nobody misses them, because nobody knows them. وَإِن مَرَضُوا لَمْ يُعَادُوا. When they fall ill, no one pays them a visit. وَإِن خَطَبُوا لَمْ يُزَوَّجُوا. Subhanallah. That should give some consolation to all the young brothers who go out and try to get married, but they get rejected over and over again. The Imam says that when they go to propose, everyone says, but who are you? What's so special about you? You have this simple job. You make a modest, at best, a modest income. You're nothing special. You're not famous. You don't have any position of prominence in the community. وَإِن خَطَبُوا لَمْ يُزَوَّجُوا. They end up becoming members of that exclusive club. وَإِن خَطَبُوا لَمْ يُزَوَّجُوا وَإِن مَاتُوا لَمْ يُشْهَدُوا. And when they die, no one even bothers to show up at the funeral. These are the kind of Shia that the Imam is looking for. Then Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, I'll mention this hadith and then inshallah transition towards the end of the majlis. The Imam says, إِن قَدَرْتَ أَلَّا تُعْرَفْ فَافْعَلْ. If you can actually get to a point where people don't recognize you, do so. Because it means you'd have to step over this egocentric, narcissistic desire of yours. You'd have to avoid so many opportunities of becoming famous, becoming prominent, becoming loved and adored. إن قدرت أن لا تعرف فافعل وما عليك أن يثني عليك الناس وما عليك أن لا يثني عليك الناس وما عليك أن تكون مذموما عند الناس. Who cares if people don't praise you? Who cares if you don't have a social media profile where people send you positive comments and likes and favorites and whatnot over every little thing you do, every little thing you wear? Who cares? وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَن تَكُونَ مَذْمُومًا. Who cares if people insult you and people think low of you? إِن كُنْتَ مَحْمُودًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings you close to Him, then what does it matter what people say? Who cares? Then the Imam said, ثم قال الإمام قال أبي علي بن أبي طالب. My father, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam refers to Amir al-Mu'mineen as my father. He says, my father Ali ibn Abi Talib said, لا خير في العيش إلا لرجلين. There is no good in this life except for two people. Number one, رجل يزداد كل يوم خيرا. One who increases their moral worth, who increases their knowledge, who increases their piety. يزداد كل يوم خيرا ورجل يتدارك منيته بالتوبة. And another person who seeks forgiveness for their past sins. That's a good person. But what other people say, what other people comment about you, how does that add to your worth? How does it make you any better? And remember when the Prophet said that it grows hypocrisy in the heart, the love of respect and adoration and love and so forth. The reason for that is because when you enter this mindset and when you try to do things to please other people, and there is a feedback loop. You know what a feedback loop is? You say something funny, people praise you. That praise tingles your narcissistic desire, so it makes you want to do it more. It's just like a drug. It makes you want to be funnier. It makes you a people pleaser. To say things and to do things only to attract the validation of other people. That's what happens. This is what the feedback loop does. This is what this dopamine drug does to you and to your brain. Right? When that happens, soon enough, you'll become the biggest hypocrite. Why? Because you will only do the things that make other people validate your actions. You will reveal only the part of you that people love and respect and like. You will cover the bad stuff and only show the good stuff. And even the good stuff are mostly fake now. Because you're stuck in this vortex, in this feedback loop. Muawiyah sent a letter to Amr ibn al-As. By the way, Muawiyah was he also had this insatiable beast inside of him. He also cared about his legacy. He cared about how people saw him. But he went through the wrong avenue. We all care about people respecting us and loving us and whatnot, but there's two ways you could do this. Either you could go it alone, you could do it the traditional way, the way people are doing it nowadays, and you will be forgotten as soon as the water on your grave dries up. Look at what happened to Muawiyah. Nobody remembers that little pathetic monster except to curse him. And we remember Ali ibn Abi Talib, who literally said to people who were walking behind him, when he was Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Imam looked around, he said, "Can I help you?" They said, "No, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we're just what I like to call your fan base. We're just people who love to walk with you." The Imam said, "No, the worst thing you can do to someone is walk behind them, because it feeds that beast." The Imam said, "If you have something you'd like me to help you with, then fine. If you don't, walk away." Amir al-Mu'mineen did that, and he didn't seek admiration and respect. He sought the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God gave him all the admiration and respect. In this world and the next, he's the king of paradise. Saqil Kawthar. He's the one who decides who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. So, Muawiyah went through the wrong way. The way most people go and try to get this respect. He sent a letter to Amr ibn al-As. He said to him, "Look, I'm going to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I need you to come and help me. I need your advice. You're a smart, intelligent person who knows a lot about war, about diplomacy, about negotiations and so forth. I want you to come and join me." Amr ibn al-As responded to Muawiyah with a long poem. This poem includes scriptural references and statements of Rasulullah about Amir al-Mu'mineen, in praise of Amir al-Mu'mineen, so much that most Shia aren't able to recount this many hadiths about the status of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Do you get what I'm saying here? Amr ibn al-As, the sworn enemy of Ali, knew more about the status of Ali than most Shia. When Muawiyah received his response, he knew that Amr was only trying to jack up the price. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Even in responding to Muawiyah's request, he was trying to tell him, listen, if I'm going to sell my soul to the devil, that is Muawiyah, then I need a little bit more than just the title of being your advisor. Give me more. Muawiyah said, he knew exactly how to handle him. He said, how about you becoming the governor of Egypt? Now, Amr ibn al-As was infatuated and obsessed with Egypt because he tasted the sweet nectar of being the governor, being the king of Egypt for a brief period. The second appointed Amr ibn al-As as the governor of Egypt, and then when it was time for this third, Uthman, when he came on board, he threw out Amr ibn al-As and he appointed his half-brother to be the governor of Egypt. So Amr ibn al-As always had this obsession with it. Muawiyah told him, fine, come and join me, I'll give you Egypt. How does that sound? Amr came to his two sons. He had two sons. He told them that this is the proposal. Muawiyah wants me to go join him. What do you say? One of them said to Amr, he said to him, listen, you've lived your life and you have enough money to live a very comfortable life until the day you die. There's no reason for you to get marred and taint your reputation with fighting Ali ibn Abi Talib. Don't do it. Be content with whatever you have. His second son said to him, listen, Dad, if Muawiyah is going to fight Ali, this is going to be big. If you don't get involved, you're not even going to be a footnote in this saga. No one will remember you. Do you not want to be remembered? Do you not want to leave a legacy? Do you not want people to love you? Do you not want people to like you and remember you? If that's the case, then you have to get involved. Number one, he tapped into that desire. Number two, he said, now, as for your involvement, you have to choose whether you're going to go with Muawiyah or with Ali. Going with Ali is not a very profitable proposition. Why? Because of several reasons. Number one, Ali doesn't need your physical strength because he's got Malik and he's Ali. Ali doesn't need your intelligence because, hello, he's Ali. You literally have nothing to offer Ali ibn Abi Talib. You're not even going to be a foot soldier in his army. The second problem you have with Ali ibn Abi Talib is that Ali is not going to offer you anything. Ali himself is the most ascetic adorer and worshipper. He has divorced this world thrice, as he said, طَلَّقْتُكِ ثَلَاثًا وَلَا رَجْعَةَ لِي إِلَيْكِ. Ali ibn Abi Talib is not about cutting deals and giving money and, positions and all that. So you're not going to end up with much. But if you want to both be remembered and to have a prominent position, then Muawiyah is your best bet. Because that's a guy you can actually do under the table deals with. So go join him. So he made his decision. He asked his servant to prepare his ride, his horse. He packed up and he set out for Sham. When he left Medina, he went and he reached the crossroads. His servant, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes fulfills the proof. He makes things so crystal clear so that you don't make a decision and then blame it on someone else. You have no one to blame but yourself. His servant got to this crossroads. He looked at his master, Amr ibn al-As, on the back of the horse. He said to him, listen, this is the way to Kufa, where Ali ibn Abi Talib is stationed, where paradise awaits. And this is the way to Sham, where Muawiyah lives, where it is inevitable hell. Which direction do you want to take? He said, take me to Sham, because I want to step into the fires of hell with my own 2 feet. I know what I'm doing here. Probably didn't believe in heaven or hell. He said to him, take me to Sham. So he went, and the rest, as they say, is history. Next time you see yourself in a position where it's whether people like you or you doing the right thing, you know what to do. If you have to do Amr bil Ma'ruf, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, whether other people like you or not shouldn't matter. You do the right thing and you will be loved, you will be liked, you will be elevated and raised in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who cares if a bunch of nobodies on social media like you or not? So don't take off the hijab or do things to tarnish this hijab just so other people say, oh, how beautiful, how cute. Don't do something stupid and sinful just so other people smash that like button for you. Do the right thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate you. I do apologize. Tonight is a night when we remember the 3-year-old orphan of Abu Abdullah Hussein. It's the night of her martyrdom, Ruqayya bint al-Hussein. Some of you have been to Sham. You've been to the city where Muawiyah once was the king. Amr ibn al-As was his right-hand man, when they had palaces and mansions that were the talk of the entire world. Kings in the Roman Empire envied what Muawiyah had. He had pools literally connected to a winery. He would swim in alcohol, enjoyed his life like a beast, like a cheap inbred, like an animal. And yet today, who is the king of Sham? Who is the queen of Sham? When you go to Sham, when you go to Damascus, where do you go? You go to this small area in the old part of town, the shrine of Ruqayya bint al-Hussein alayhim as-salam. One thing you'll notice when you go there, if you haven't, by the way, inshallah, we ask Allah in the name of Ruqayya bint al-Hussein on this special night that He doesn't deprive us of the privilege and the honor of kissing the doorway leading into her shrine, sooner rather than later, inshallah. Those of you who have been there know that one of the things that's quite prevalent in that area, especially the road that leads to the shrine, is you have a lot of toy stores. And all these toy stores have what? They have little dolls. Because they know that many of the pilgrims, many of the zuwar, they want to buy a little doll. And if you ask them, what is it about these dolls? Why are you buying a doll? You're here to pay respects and to visit the shrine. They say, where we come from, in our own towns, in our own cities, if there was an orphan, we'd often, especially a girl, we'd often buy her a doll to keep her occupied, so that she doesn't feel the absence of her father. And so they buy these dolls and they take them into the shrine of Ruqayya, and they place them all over the shrine. Subhanallah. Is this how an orphan is supposed to be treated? Then why is it that Ruqayya bint al-Hussein, every time she cried out for her father, she would be whipped and beaten by these savages in the army of Yazid and Umar ibn Sa'd? بأبي أنت وأمي يا رقية يا بنت الحسين يا يتيمة الحسين. Every time she asked for her father, she's a little girl, only 3 years old, who doesn't know what happened. All she knows is that her father headed towards the battlefield but never came back. She doesn't recognize what happened to him. All she heard towards the end of his life was saying, وَحَقْ جَدِّي أَنَا عَطْشَانٍ. Quench my thirst, I ask you in the name of my grandfather. That was the last time Ruqayya heard her father speak. She doesn't know, for all she knows, she's going to meet her father in Sham. As she walks on the thorns, as her feet get wounded, as her back gets bruised every time they beat her, she's probably thinking to herself, as soon as I meet my father, I will tell him what you did to me. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. They head towards Sham. They go there. That night they find themselves in the ruins of Sham, right next to the palace of the tyrant Yazid. Now she'd heard that she's headed towards the ruins, and because now she's in Sham, she wakes up in the middle of the night saying, Abata, Abata, where is my father? I want my father. Every time she asked for him, she'd be told, Inna abaki fi safar, your father is on a trip, he's traveling. Well, here we are, we're in Sham, where is my father now? The tyrant hears that Ruqayya is asking for her father. His sleep is disturbed. He knows. Have you seen how an orphan reacts when they see a picture of their father? When they see a portrait of their loved one? Have you seen how they burst into tears uncontrollably? So he knows that by doing the thing he did, he will only kill Ruqayya. So he says, خُذُوا إِلَيْهَا رَأْسَ وَالِدِهَا. Take to her father's severed head. When they take this bowl with her father's head that's covered with a cloth, they had no intention but to kill Ruqayya. Some have said that Lady Zainab rushed to them and she tried to stop them, saying that I promised to make her calm down. Don't show her this.